Artistic movements in cinema have shaped the way stories are told on screen. Emerging from broader cultural and aesthetic shifts, these movements reflect changing values, philosophies, and technological innovations. Much like in painting or literature, filmmakers have long aligned themselves with particular artistic styles to explore the human condition in ways that are either grounded in everyday reality or stretch into imaginative dreamlike realms. Two of the most influential and contrasting movements that have always intrigued me are realism and surrealism. This is Cinema Essay, and I will try to summarize these two movements, their differences, and what they have in common. This is Surrealism and Surrealism Explained. Realism in film developed as a response to the overly theatrical or fantastical elements that dominated early cinema, like German Expressionism or musicals. It sought to mirror everyday life with minimal distortion. Originating in the early 20th century, realism became especially rooted in European cinema. Directors like the Lumiere brothers are often credited with pioneering the approach, with their short films documenting real people and events. Realist filmmakers often utilized non-professional actors, natural lighting, and on-location shooting to blur the line between life and cinema.
Manifested themselves when the idea of this movie came up. One was to do a film about Cleo, the real-life Cleo, that the process was going to be through memory. In other words, used to recover those moments, shooting in the actual places and the actual spaces. And the other thing was going to be in black and white.
Surrealism, by contrast, aimed to capture the irrational, the dreamlike, and the unconscious. Influenced by the writings of André Breton, the visual works of artists like Salvador Dalí, surrealist cinema began as a rebellion against the conventions of both realism and traditional narrative structures. One of the earliest examples is Un Chant Andalou, a collaboration between Dalí and Luis Buñuel. This film deliberately defies logic, using shocking imagery and non-linear progression to jar the viewer into a new kind of awareness. Realism and surrealism appear to be polar opposites, but they both strive to explore deeper truths. Realism tries to reflect life as it is, while surrealism dives into the psyche, suggesting that dreams and subconscious desires are as much a part of our experience as observable events. In this way, both movements attempt to get closer to what it means to be human, albeit through very different lenses. Italian Neorealism emerged after World War II as a powerful example of realism in cinema. Directors like Vittorio De Sica and Roberto Rossellini used the ruined landscapes of post-war Italy and cast everyday people to tell emotionally raw stories. Films like Bicycle Thieves exposed the hardships faced by the working class with a simplicity and directness that made audiences confront social realities. In France, Jean Renoir's The Rules of the Game blended realism with social critique, portraying the hypocrisy and moral decay of the French upper class. Renoir's camera movements and character-driven narratives laid the groundwork for a new form of cinematic realism that was attentive to nuance and moral complexity. Meanwhile, surrealism found fertile ground in the different parts of the world. Aside from Luis Buñuel, who would later go on to take surrealist-inflected realist films like The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, other directors experimented with the form. Czech director Jan Smankmajer used stop-motion animation and grotesque imagery to bring surrealist ideas to life in works like Alice, a reimagining of Alice in Wonderland through a dark psychological lens. Ingmar Bergman, though not a surrealist in the strictest sense, often integrated surrealist imagery and themes into his otherwise realist dramas. In films like Persona, dream logic, identity confusion, and psychological fragmentation share how realism and surrealism can coexist, creating a space where internal and external realities meet. In the modern era, directors like David Lynch have carried the surrealist touch. His film Eraserhead is filled with strange, nightmarish scenes that resist rational interpretation. Lynch's later works like Mulholland Drive blend narrative ambiguity with dream sequences, highlighting how surrealism can open up new emotional and psychological spaces in storytelling.
I love abstractions, and the power of cinema to tell abstractions is huge. So it's as if people either don't have so much intuition, or they don't trust their intuition, or whatever. And there's a lot of noise in the cinema, and if you're not paying attention, because every little thing is got to be right, and you got to get into that world, and then trust your own intuition.
On the realist side, Filmmakers like the Dardenne Brothers from Belgium continued a Neorealist tradition. The film Rosetta, for example, uses handheld cameras and a focus on marginalized individuals to reflect texture for real life. Their work demonstrates that realism is not just about aesthetics, but about empathy and ethical engagement with the world. Realism and surrealism both challenge the audience to look more closely either at the world around them or at the thoughts and emotions within. They reject the artificial gloss of the commercial cinema in favor for something more meaningful, a film that feels lived and dreamed rather than manufactured. Both movements have inspired countless filmmakers across cultures. Iranian director Abbas Kiarostami, for instance, employed realism with poetic elegance in films like Taste of Cherry, where long silences and everyday interactions revealed the inner lives of characters. Meanwhile, Alejandro Jodorowski embraced surrealism in films like The Holy Mountain, which used religious and mystical imagery to explore spiritual transformation. Several modern movie directors have developed distinctive voices in either realism or surrealism, and some even blended the two. One prominent realist is the British filmmaker Ken Loach, known for his social conscious dramas that focus on struggles of the working class. Films like I, Daniel Blake, and Sorry We Missed You use non-professional actors, natural light, and documentary-style camera work to highlight systemic injustices with raw emotional impact. Loach views cinema as a tool for political change, aiming to present life as it is, without romanticism, so that the audiences are forced to control uncomfortable truths. In contrast, Yorgos Lanthimos, the Greek director behind the films like Lobster and The Favourite, leans into surrealism with a unique deadpan style and absurdist narratives. His work often features rigid, unnatural dialogue and bizarre social systems that mirror real-world absurdities. Lanthimos uses realism not to escape reality, but to exaggerate it. His cinema questions social norms by placing characters in extreme scenarios, encouraging viewers to reflect on how arbitrary or constructed much of daily life and relationships really are. Bridging the gap between realism and surrealism is Lynne Ramsey, a Scottish director known for We Need to Talk About Kevin and You Were Never Really Here. Her films often focus on trauma and psychological tension, blending grounded performances and everyday settings with disorienting visuals and sound design. Ramsey's perspective is that internal states can be more telling than external action. By using subjective camera work and poetic editing, she creates a kind of emotional realism. Another filmmaker known for surreal realism is Carlos Reygadas, a Mexican director whose works like Post-Nervous Looks and Silent Light meld naturalistic environments with haunting mystical imagery. Reygadas explores themes of spirituality, nature, and human fragility through a deeply personal and often non-linear lens. He believes cinema should be an introspective experience, one that captures the unseen layers of human perception. By merging realism with the metaphysical, Reygadas pushes the boundaries of storytelling, suggesting that life itself contains surreal elements waiting to be unveiled. The differences between realism and surrealism are clear in their intentions and methods. Realism seeks to depict things as they are, while surrealism seeks to show what lies beneath or beyond, yet they share a dissatisfaction with surface appearances and a desire to go deeper. Both question what cinema can do, and both stretch the boundaries of the medium in their own ways. In the end, realism and surrealism matter in cinema because they offer two complementary ways of understanding experiences. One looks outward to society, the other inward into the mind. Both movements have shaped the history of film not just through stylistic influence, but by expanding the possibilities of storytelling itself. Thank you for watching, and please leave a comment of what other videos and topics in cinema would you like me to cover. Thank you again, and see you next time.